Hey guys, Chris from the Ultimate Recycler. I'm in my shed today and yes, it's still messy, but I have to get out and do some gardening or at least trimming around the edge of the lawn. And I grabbed this old trimmer that I got in a deal and thought, good chance to use this. I just plugged it in and pulled the trigger and absolutely nothing's happening. It's not seized up. I don't know if it's burned out. I don't know if the switch has got a problem. We better check first to see if we've got power. But I thought I'd just do a quick video and show you how it's worth trying to fix these old things up. Quite often these old ones, this is a Black & Decker, but it's a vintage one. It's probably 1970s or so, maybe 80s. But often these old ones are well worth getting going rather than buying a new one. They were made a bit better back then, and why throw it out if we can fix it? Now it may seem really basic, but check the power supply first. You would be amazed how many times something gets pulled apart and you're looking for a complicated problem when the problem actually is just somewhere else. So always check with something you know works, just in case there's a fuse tripped or something. Okay, that's good. Never assume. I think that's the secret. Assume nothing, check everything when you're repairing. So we know we have electricity to here. So the next thing to do is probably to check the switch. I'll take this little bracket off here, and I think it has security screws in it, little Torx security screws, so I have a set that will undo those. Okay, I've unplugged the mains cord and I've found my security bit set. This is a kin chrome one. They have bits to cover just about all the security screws you're going to find. If you're scrapping out or if you're doing repairs, you really need to get one of these little kits. I think this one was about $30 Australian. And they're available from most big hardware stores. I'll have a look on Amazon, and if I can find a set, I'll link it underneath this video. So that appears to be the right bit for the job. So we'll undo the things. As I said, I've unplugged the mains cord. Never do this live. We'll take this apart carefully. There could be a little spring, so I have to be careful where the trigger is or the switch, and we'll be able to investigate. There's a fair chance the problem will be up here. It's usually a loose wire or something, or a poor connection, bit of corrosion. And a lot of the problems on electrical equipment are usually where there's something mechanical, something that moves. Rarely the wiring inside is just going to develop a fault for no reason at all, unless the thing's been wet and there's bad corrosion. Okay, that's got the screws out. Let's carefully pull this apart. And hopefully we don't lose any springs. There we go. So it doesn't look like there's actually a spring in there. I wonder if there was meant to be. Anyway, oh no, there's not, because that switch is actually spring loaded. So you can see the mechanical part of this trigger appears to be okay. It's moving the lever there of the switch. There doesn't appear to be any damage to the wires. We have a bit of a spider's web in here, but no other damage. So our next test will be to get a multimeter and just make sure we've got power going into the switch, and we'll see if there's power going out. So obviously to do that we need to plug the thing back in. We are dealing with mains power here, so you do need to be very careful, but the wires don't look to have any bare parts that you can actually touch, and we'll be able to get our meter probe into that switch and just check that the switch is working. Probably before we even get the meter out, we could probably physically operate this and just see if it works. There is a chance that the trigger is a little worn and it's not pushing the switch over far enough. So we'll probably try that first. So to test this, I've got the switch, which is plastic casing mounted in a vise, so it'll be well insulated. There'll be no danger of any live wires touching anywhere. I've plugged the cord back in, and let's physically move this switch and see if it turns the motor on. Okay, there's nothing. And I can feel that switch going full travel. So I'll now tilt that up and I'll see if I can get a meter in there to make sure we've got voltage going in for a start, and then see if we've got voltage coming out. Now I can't get the test leads into the bare wires, into the end of the wires, and the switch itself is riveted and it's basically all one unit. So rather than muck around trying to poke something in there and testing it, I'm just going to actually trace the wires down to the motor end, and we can test the wires there to see if we've got power coming through. If we don't have power coming through from down that end, then we know the problem is in the switch. We don't have security screws this end, they're just normal Phillips head. So I had to get the shroud off before we can actually split the motor casing. And I've got the other two screws out from in this part. So it should come apart now. Although I suspect this sticker thing's actually holding it together. Okay, well there you go, it's split it in half, but that won't really matter. Okay, what do we got going on here? It looks like the windings of this motor have been extremely hot. So I'm not sure if the motor has actually cooked or whether we have an electrical problem and the thing might still go. So I can at least test the wires now coming from the switch. I can access the ends of them. Basically, one goes to the windings over here and one goes to the windings on this side. So I'll put the meter on it, I'll plug the power back on carefully, and I'll keep my fingers away from this area, but we'll be able to check if we've got power to the motor. So I tried the switch with the meter onto those two wires and still had no power, and I'm wondering if this isn't so much burnt, but it might be just treated with something to keep it waterproof, or maybe it was just a tar type finish on it, because the actual laminated motor casing doesn't show any signs of heat. So anyway, I've checked the wires there and I still can't get power down this end. So that points back to the switch. So just to confirm that, I've actually just bared the wires with a knife. I haven't cut through them, but I've just bared them back. And I've got some test clips on there. So we'll get a positive reading straight out of the switch whether we've got power. And if I focus on the meter and operate the switch, we have nothing. So the problem has to be in the switch. It is riveted. It's like a sealed unit, but I might just drill that rivet out and just see if we can do anything with the switch. It's not going to be worth chasing up a part and ordering a new one for this machine. I doubt you'd be able to buy one anyway. I possibly have a similar type of switch in a box of parts somewhere. Maybe we could just put a double pole toggle switch in somehow, just so that we can use the thing and get some more life out of it. But I will just dismantle this switch. It might be repairable and I might be able to just put another rivet in. So I think that's our next step. So let's try and drill out this rivet and take the switch apart without damaging anything. And we'll see if it's repairable. Alright, well that was a fail. The switch has gone quite brittle inside and the plastic just broke inside. And it was very gummed up and I don't think it was actually operating properly. Yes, we could move it and it was spring-loaded, but I think it was supposed to click and it wasn't clicking. So clearly the switch was faulty and now it's even more faulty. So that's no good. We'll see if we can find something else to use. In the meantime, I wanted to get the edges done, and I've done the edges around the veggie garden here. Christine's just mowed the lawn, so it looks quite neat, even though it's mostly weeds. And instead of using a trimmer, I went for the old-fashioned spade and chipped all the edges. Now, it's probably a good idea to do this every so often anyway. The trimmer trims it down neat, but you still have grass right up to the edges. And every now and again, I think it's a good idea to chip it out. Just gets rid of any recurring weeds that you just chip off and they keep growing. Don't you agree, Coco? Absolutely. So there we go. It looks nice and neat for now. But I do have a plan to keep that trimmer operational. So I'll have to hunt up a cord for it and we'll get back to fixing that shortly. Okay, it's the next evening. I've come back out in the shed and here's my plan to repair this trimmer. It's a bit of a hack. I've basically just bypassed the switch completely, and what I've used is a cord off an old lamp which has a switch in it. So it's certainly not ideal, and it does mean that the trimmer will be not as easy to turn on and off, because it's just not that trigger action. You actually have to reach for the switch, and it's certainly a repair I would not do for a customer or to sell the item. But for me to use this thing at home, it's an acceptable hack. It's perfectly safe. It will operate fine, and we're going to get an extra life out of this trimmer to save throwing it out. So I have given it a quick test, and the engine, the electric motor here, does actually work fine, regardless of how it looks inside. So a bit of a hack. It works beautifully. I'll just put it back together now, and we've repurposed a cord off an old lamp, and we've salvaged a trimmer that doesn't have to go to landfill or into the recycling stream, and it's perfect for what I want around here. Alright, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video. I won't go and do trimming now, it's dark, and I've done the edges as you've seen, but next time I'll be right to go.